Today we're going to talk about the Cold War. The Cold War were the events that happened between the United States and the Soviet Union between 1945 and 1991. But to understand the Cold War, we first need to understand the differences between the two countries. So we're going to create a Venn diagram and ask ourselves a series of questions. So question number one, and I'm going to abbreviate, what type of government does each country have? Now, in our Venn diagram, we're going to start with number one. We all know in our country we have what we call a democracy. And in the Soviet Union, following World War I, when they withdrew from World War I, they established between Lenin and the Bolsheviks a form of government that they call communism. So those two words themselves don't mean much unless we figure out who is in charge. And the word democracy literally means ruled by the people. So in our country, the people are in charge. They vote, they elect, they run for office, and they make the decisions. And in the communist government, they have a dictator who is appointed by the Communist Party. So those are two big differences between the United States and the Soviet Union. Let's find out some more. What type of economic system does each country have? In our country, our economic system is based on the principles of capitalism. And in the Soviet Union, their economic system is also communist. That doesn't make much sense until we again figure out who's in charge. And in the United States, in capitalism, people decide. If I want a new pair of Nikes, I buy a new pair of Nikes. If I want to invest $10,000 into Nike, I invest $10,000. If I want to invent a cure for cancer, then I go become a scientist and invent a cure for cancer. In the Soviet Union, in the communist economy, the government makes all the decisions. You have no choices, or you have very little choices. They decide where the resources are allocated, who gets to spend them, how much is spent, etc., etc. And then number 5, let's talk about 3 basic ideals that each country has. So when we're looking at the United States and we're looking at people being in charge and people making their own decisions, we have lots of freedom. And our freedoms are guaranteed to us by our rights listed in the Constitution, and those rights allow us to have lots of choices. And in the Soviet Union, it's hard for us to understand this because we don't live here, but if the government is in charge of everything, then there's probably a lot of control. Their economy is probably very stable, and they don't experience the up and downs of recessions and depressions, and there is probably little or no crime, because the government would handle things swiftly. So in looking at these two sections of our Venn diagram, we see that the countries are actually very, very different from each other. So these differences in themselves aren't going to create conflict. But there are 3 things that these countries have in common that will cause conflict. So question number 6 is, after World War II, what is our world standing? So number 6, after World War II, both of our countries come out as superpowers, but very differently. The United States did not suffer the losses that the Soviet Union did. The Soviet Union had 26 million people lost, their country was destroyed, but because their government makes all the decisions on where to allocate their resources, they invested all of their resources into their military. Question 7, how powerful are they? And question 7, we know the United States ended World War II by dropping 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and 4 years later, those same secrets were sold to the Russians, and they detonated their own atomic bomb. And question 8 is really the key to why we have, or why there were issues between the Soviet Union and the United States. What are our goals? Heck, just being different from each other is not enough to cause a problem. But number 8 is where the problem lies and why the Cold War existed. Each of our sides thought we were the best and we wanted to spread our ideas. And because our ideas are so different from each other, if they tried spreading communism into a country, the United States would try to dissuade those people from thinking that, and vice versa. If we were trying to spread democracy, the Soviet Union wanted to make sure that there wasn't democracy. So number 8 is the key to why there's a problem. Just being different than each other does not cause problems. But when we try to spread our way of life and they try to spread their way of life around the world, that is when the conflict happens.